And hey, there we are. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and here we are today with another Writers Wednesday. Thank you to Ryan Danks for joining us again. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
Well, good, good. And below us, who's also on a dog walk right now, is Walt, Robillard, frequent co-host. How you doing, Walt?
Yo, I thought it was later.
I did too. So these things happen. And Walt is walking his famous Belgian Malinois, appearing in various forms of media. How was Balder?
He's a little excited because there's a couple of dogs close by, so he wants to thunder hump his dominance into the equation right now. So we got him on the asshole collar.
Yeah, I got one of those for my my corgi too. Believe it or not. But
say it isn't so. Your corgi?
Well, got her on a harness and a gentle leader because she wants to chase every rabbit she finds.
That means that there's some dog left in her.
Well, yeah. I mean, she's a breed. She's a mix. She's a half corgi, half blue healer. So they're all about chasing.
So you got a cute dog that's also smart. So you're going to be played a lot.
She is manipulative.
Like having a daughter.
Yeah. All right. So today, at Ryan's suggestion, so we're talking about MacGuffins. And I've got one of the more famous ones from Hollywood up here. To our right, the Maltese Falcon from the famous movie of the same name. And I know there's a lot of famous quotes about what a MacGuffin is, but since Ryan brought it up, I will let him do the chore of defining what a MacGuffin is.
Oh, yay. Okay. So it's been a while since I've seen a definition, but it's really what the characters care about, which is why we care about the characters. The way they relate to the MacGuffin is the way we're going to relate to them. If they want to keep the MacGuffin safe and do, or if it's a bad MacGuffin, destroy it. But mostly, if they want to keep the MacGuffin safe or do good things with it, they're good guys. We think of them as good guys. And if they want to do bad things to it, we think of them as villains, and that's how we kind of identify those things. And it's the easiest plot device to use to show that save the cat or kill the dog moment. Is how it relates to the MacGuffin. Okay. So it's really the buy-in, I guess, the audience buy-in to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to say it was Alfred Hitchcock who defined that MacGuffin as a device used for hunting lions in the Scottish Highlands. And the interviewer said, "Well, there are no lions in the Scottish Highlands." And he said, "Well, you see my point exactly. MacGuffin can be anything at all."
Yeah.
So,
and it has been in so many different movies. It doesn't have to be an object.
That's true. Let's see. Before the show, we were trying to find good examples, and you had mentioned the Infinity Stone from Guardians of the Galaxy, and I guess we could say Infinity Stones have kind of been and here's a visual of that. Those have kind of been a MacGuffin for a lot of Marvel movies.
And that. So we haven't discussed it, so this might be a contentious viewpoint here. But I think that's why the MCU works so much better than most DC movies, is that DC wants to play with characterization and test the limits of what they can do to still maintain being that character. But their MacGuffins are pretty weak. The only one that, and in my mind, probably one of their better movies that has a good, clear MacGuffin is Aquaman. And that at least the plot is very easy to follow. It feels like it moves right along, and it's a fun adventure. But MCU movies tend to have very clear MacGuffins every single time, and that's why we, in my opinion, that's why they're taking more people like them. Maybe they're more popular to some degree. I think that's an objective statement.
So I'm thinking, I liked Aquaman, but I've only seen it once a few years ago. What do you think is the MacGuffin in that movie?
So the MacGuffin was clearly a trident.
Oh, okay.
When he learns about the trident and that it exists, and they show him like the map or whatever, the stone or whatever it was they used, and then immediately we're shown that is that's the most powerful thing and the thing that's going to allow him to rule, because he tries to use his mom's trident in a fight, and it's not good enough and it gets shattered. And it demonstrates that there is one that's out there, and then you got to go get it because that's the only one that's going to work. And then at the end, it demonstrates its power. And so that makes it the clear MacGuffin. Like the Infinity Stone, what I like about that one with the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it's the best example of a reload.
You guys still there?
Yeah, I think it reloaded for a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
But I think the Guardians of the Galaxy is the best example because in the very beginning, I mean, we have a little prologue to learn that Peter Quill is a human. But then after that, the very first scene, he takes that orb, and then the bad guys show up, and then and then the first 3 scenes, we see the different elements of the MacGuffin, that there's a hero who's going to get it, there's bad guys who want it, and there's a fool who keeps getting tricked about it, which is Yondu. He keeps getting fooled, and he can never grasp the thing. And even when he does, it's not even it. It's literally a foolish character that's inside of it the whole time. So the way they relate to it is how they relate to the overall story and how we relate to them. And then they don't know what it is, but they can make money on it, which defines them. And then once in the middle of the movie, it's the exact middle of the movie when it gets opened with the scene you have there, and we learn the truth, which in the midpoint, you always learn a new truth. And in this case, it's the truth of the MacGuffin. And then we see a new reality of that with its demonstration. The girl grabs it, bad things happen to her. But the only person who's able to grasp it the whole movie is without any kind of help, really. I mean, kind of help, but is Peter Quill. In the beginning, he takes it. No one can really take it from him. Every time they try, it escapes their grasp too. And then at this scene, he's the one that slaps it back together, puts it back in his pouch. At the very end, he's the one who can hold it. You know, like it. The way that he relates to it shows his specialness, his hero. The way the Collector relates to it, the girl sees it as her freedom. Like everyone is defined by how they treat and react and see the usefulness of that MacGuffin. And I think it was the best. It's probably the clearest one in my mind that it works because it reveals everyone's character in such a clear way.
I hadn't thought about that, but you make a compelling argument. I'm thinking back on a few other movies, and yeah, I mean, you can't find one in every movie, but like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's easy to see how the Ark of the Covenant kind of plays the same role. At least for some of the main characters, how they relate to it. You know, Indiana Jones versus the Nazis versus Bellic. And it kind of drives the action up until the very end when it basically ends the story.
Well, if you think about it, and going back to Guardians, because I think it's just such a clear example. The story begins when he gets it. That's when the story begins. That scene where he's singing with the rat and everything, but he goes in there, he gets it. That's the start of the story. And then it's no longer safe. Like it was safe in that field. He removes it. It's no longer safe. And then when it gets back to the Nova Corps at the end, and now it's safe, the story's over. It was because the story was about the MacGuffin, not about the people. They just happened to be the agents of change in it. But and that interests me a lot because, you know, like the story, even though I recently watched that Indiana Jones one, and there was a bit of a prologue because we had to learn who Indy was, but it really starts the inciting incident when he learns that it's still up for grabs, that people are trying to find it, kind of know where it is. And then at the end, once it's found and everything that happens with it, the story ends very quickly because the story of the MacGuffin is over, and that's what the story was about.
Yeah, it's I'll have to think about that. I hadn't thought about that so much. I've used them in, well, we're game writers. I've used them in various gaming products, but there was an adventure wrote a few years back, Helicarrier Heist. Walt did the layout on that. Thanks again, Walt. And you know,
I do what I can.
Appreciate it. The whole plot is you have to infiltrate an enemy helicarrier, and you have to get a thing. And I have it written so the MacGuffin, the target of what you have to get is this thing. But hey, here's a 1d6 random roll table. It could be all these other things too, because it's more important. It's something that drives the action. What it actually is almost doesn't matter so much as long as your characters are there and they want it, and the bad guys want to keep them from getting it. But yeah,
right,
yeah.
Because like the Infinity Stones are, even for me, who's a huge comic book nerd, I get confused which one was which.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter. It was there in the movies, in Captain America and Guardians and all the others. to teach us who the characters were by how they reacted to it. It really didn't matter what it was.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I mean, I can name all 7 dwarves with a gun to my head, but I probably couldn't tell you the names of all the Infinity Stones. And
I know the names, but I don't know, like, I know the one in Guardians was the Power Stone, but I don't know the rest of them really. Mind, Power, and Time. I don't know the others very clearly.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, as we say, it doesn't matter. So it's the thing that drives the action. It shows us who the characters are, moves things along. Exactly what they're all about doesn't matter until like the last 2 movies of the cycle, when you get that.
Right.
So
I was thinking about this in Star Wars. There's Rogue One it's looked on pretty favorably as a really good Star Wars story. And then you have stories that are not looked on favorably, and there's a whole bunch of them, and that gets into contentious area. But Rogue One, I think, works because it's the Star Wars story that you knew 100% what the MacGuffin was right away. Mm-hmm. You knew that it was the plans to this Imperial super weapon that they had to go steal. And once they got it and transmitted it, that was it. I mean, literally, that was it. But that was a very clear MacGuffin. And then you get, like, in A New Hope, Leia was the MacGuffin and her relationship to the Death Star. But then after that, like Return of the Jedi, the MacGuffin, you could make an argument for 5-10 different things being the MacGuffin in that story. And in my mind, that makes it a little weaker. I think we lost Walt.
I think he's probably dialing in from home, but hopefully we'll see him in a second. Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you because Return of the Jedi, the focus is divided. You get 2 or 3 different plot lines going on at the end there. You've got the confrontation in the throne room, confrontation on the Endor moon, and then the actual space battle. And it's there's not really a clarity of action because there's so much different things going on.
Yeah.
So, hey, Walt, you're back.
I'm back and switching out of my mobile role.
Well, you know, this is kind of, I don't want to play this up too much, but I struggle a lot with story plotting and trying to figure out, you know, how I want to structure a story, and do I use the I call it the Dan Harmon circle, which is a greatly simplified version of you know, the monomyth. But or there's, you know, 3-act structure, 7-act structure. But if you think about MacGuffin, that kind of gives a clarity to things, right? Because you know what everybody's going to be after or trying to defend. I don't know. Do you guys use this in your own writing? Well, you're writing a shitload these days, so.
Oh God. Yeah. One of the stories I'm writing right now, there's a MacGuffin that is actually the set piece for where the story takes place, and they don't realize that in the beginning because there's it's a story that takes place where the characters aren't sure why they're there. Nobody's quite sure of exactly what's going on. They have pieces, but there's not a complete picture of, hey, get to the chopper or something like that. Something that's easily identifiable that has to happen. So, you know, they're just kind of blundering through things in the beginning, and they don't realize that the place where everything is happening is actually the MacGuffin. And I find that with MacGuffins of any type, as long as you have a clear idea what it is, and not so much like the Infinity Stone. This is the Power Stone, and it does XYZ, and this is how it affects time. Also, you know, it's not like that. It's as long as you understand, is it useful? Is it useless? Does somebody want it, or does somebody want to destroy it? I know that for Ryan, the Infinity Stones play you know, the primary role of an example as a MacGuffin. For me, you can't really see it because they're kind of holding up books. But I have the complete leather-bound editions of The Lord of the Ring, to include The Hobbit. That ring is
another excellent.
Yeah, and to go back to what Ryan was saying, it's how the characters react to it. Some people are easily corrupted by it, but you have in the main trilogy, you have the main character who is who resists it a lot. You know, he could use it tons of times and just constantly do what he wants, but most of the time he just kind of keeps it out of the way because he knows it's not something he should be messing with. So, you know, it speaks to his character as well. And then, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just it's probably another subject for a whole other podcast, but I wonder if sometimes having your main villain be the MacGuffin, like they did in Lord of the Rings saga, because I wonder.
Well,
if
look at Stormbringer. You know that sword.
That's actually interesting there, because even though Sauron is the MacGuffin of the entire series, the ring is the MacGuffin.
Is a physical interaction of that.
Yeah. And so it's the MacGuffin of the stories. But when you take the Hobbit and everything as a whole, Sauron becomes the MacGuffin, which is actually interesting, because if you look at TV shows, they'll have a MacGuffin for the whole thing, and then usually a MacGuffin for the specific episode.
Yeah.
To drive that.
Yeah, and you see that in Guardians of the Galaxy as well. It should actually, that first movie, the way that it's paced, plotted, and produced should be called Guardians of the MacGuffin, right?
Yeah.
Because everything in that movie deals with a MacGuffin or another, right? In the beginning, it's the introduction of the main item of interest. Then, when it gets out, and Gamora starts getting a hold of it, they get jailed. So now I need that guy's leg, right? So now there's a whole nother series of MacGuffins that have to be interacted with. At one point, the ship is the MacGuffin, and you just keep chasing from item to item to item. And that's a really interesting use of that particular kind of literary device, because it constantly shows that unlike characters like you might find in like Pride and Prejudice or something weird, you know, or my favorite book of all time is Old Man and the Sea. I love that book. I will read that book anytime it's in front of me. Old Man and the Sea is not so much about his interaction with the MacGuffin of the fish. It's his interaction against nature. It's very much a man versus nature tale. But unlike those stories where it's so focused on character, the idea of character in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie is constantly told through interaction with stuff, you know, and that's kind of interesting, because you're technically dealing with a bunch of pirates, and that's how pirates see the world, through their stuff. So yeah, very, very good choice.
The thing about MacGuffins is another favorite of mine for MacGuffins would be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh yeah,
because the Green Destiny is everyone who interacts with it. They even have a scene where characters that are mostly inconsequential, the mayor and whatever, the magistrate, they touch it and they break the cup with it. But everyone who sees that sword announces their intention for the sword. Yeah. And that goal, the way that it defines everyone's goals, defines who they are. And I think that is a very powerful use for plot, for story structure. Like, because I struggle with it too, Mike. And if I know what the MacGuffin is, then I can very easily structure something, because then I know, okay, there's a new character. What's his goal for the MacGuffin? Then I know, is he bad guy, good guy? How's he going to play into it? And it'll cruise along the way Walt writes, where he just gets going, because I know this guy wants this from the MacGuffin, or wants this for it. Done. Let's explore. And this other person wants it. The way that the way you find the good guy versus bad guy is like Daredevil. Hell's Kitchen was the MacGuffin, and Daredevil wanted to save it, and Fisk wanted to burn it down. So those two things can't happen together. They can't coexist. So therefore, they have to fight. And that makes them bad guy, good guy, but it's how they related to the MacGuffin of Hell's Kitchen. And so it's I really like that definition of goal to reveal character, and then also tell me what to do as a writer in the next step, because I know this guy wants it, this guy wants that. What's the next logical step in their goals, and how are they going to clash?
Gave me something to think about. I guess that's a sign of a good podcast. So
yeah.
Oh, hey, I found a visual of the Green Destiny sword.
Green Destiny. Yeah. Yeah, and going back to Mike's thing where he was talking about Pulp Fiction earlier, Royale with cheese. They totally off the subject before I get into that. You guys ever watch those Angry Alien shorts?
Angry? No. What is this?
Really? So, complete movie plots told in 60 seconds by cartoon bunnies.
Mm.
They're
It just sounds
hysterical.
familiar. Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome. So anyway, back to the point, because they had a Pulp Fiction thing, and the guy, that's the way the guy said it. He was like, royalties. You never find out what's in the case.
Yeah.
And you
Like
don't need
Ronan.
to. Yeah.
Ronan, same thing.
Yep.
That bothered me when I was young.
I mean, it's awesome because it's just they're chasing around the case. It doesn't matter what's in it.
Yeah. It's yeah. Although I think there have been interviews where Tarantino said it was this or that, but it almost doesn't matter. It's like whether or not Harrison Ford's a replicant in that movie. It's kind of sideways to the story. It doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
But to some people it matters a lot, and that's okay. I mean, it's kind of like you've got some fans who want to have everything. Oh God, who was it? Was it Grant Morrison, or it might have been the guy who wrote? Trying to remember his name now. Bald British science fiction writer. Pick one. He was getting one of his properties adapted to an RPG, and he was like, as a writer, you like to leave things for the reader to fill in with their own imagination, and as an RPG designer, you want to classify everything in numbers. And I guess Ryan, you're an example of that, because Jade Punk exists both in fiction and RPG forms.
We need a Jade Tech book, like Jade Punk in space.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of writing that.
Are
To
you?
some degree. We discussed it a little bit, Walt.
Don't you threaten me with a good time.
But
You
it's
get
not
me all worked
necessary.
up, and then you leave me all wet and hanging.
But so I was gonna write, every time I try to write Jade Punk fiction, it comes out in flash fiction, because when I think about characters, like the setting's cool, but characters are the snapshots to me in there. That's why every chapter has a little snapshot of a character. And then Benjamin Feehan did the best job of writing fiction for it, because if you take all of the Jade Tech books and string the initial chapters together where he wrote fiction for each one, they string out into an overall kind of story arc. And I was reading through that the other day, and I was like, I don't feel like I can top this. It explores the characters, it explores the setting, it explores the Jade Tech, and but I am writing kind of a Jade Punk / Chinatown science fiction thing in space, playing with it.
This is what you need. This is I have spoken.
The world needs more Jade Punk. It'd be a good thing. Speaking of which, writing, we've got our little newsletter that hasn't had an issue yet, but I have submitted a story for critique and criticism and annihilation to Ryan and Walt. So what's the plan, Walt? Do we put the story out in the newsletter too for reader feedback, or do we just do the critiquing in there? What were your thoughts on this?
I don't know. Sure. I mean, let's take a look at it. Let's dissect it and pull it apart. I actually have it right here.
Okay.
And I can, if you want,
I have not looked at it yet.
I can put it up on what do you call it? That thing. I can put it up on Pro Writing Aid right now, and then send it back to you by the end of the show.
Yeah, sure. I can run through it for grammar. There's a lot of vernacular in there. It's set in 1930s Chicago, and so I got a lot of characters who talk like they're in The Untouchables or Guys and Dolls. So there's a lot of noun verb disagreement that's on purpose, because that's how those guys talk. But yeah, that's any feedback I can get. It's always good feedback. But we need to figure out what we're doing with the newsletter. I guess we could always talk about our subjects for next week, and this is the story we're working on. What do you guys think? And hey, that's something. Might as well give that a shot. So
yeah, because I mean, because the initial idea was to write a page, critique, talk, and then have the next author write the next piece.
Oh,
right?
I forgot you wanted to do it that way. Okay.
Right, to break that. No, this is fine too, right? Because this can get everything going, and if we're all looking at it, it might spark ideas for our own stories, and then we go into the next piece, right? But the original idea was because you guys had mentioned I'm a little stuck, and I have diarrhea of the mind, so it's like. If we wanted to do a story right now, right, you could whisper to Ryan, and then Ryan could blurt out the idea that you both came up with, and right as we're on the show, I guarantee you by the end of 30 minutes, we could have 1,000 words.
Oh yeah, easy.
You try that for next episode, next Wednesday?
Those, yeah, that could be interesting, especially with what's going on right now. So, in one of the other podcasts I participate in, which every time I say that, my podcast hosts usually go, "What? You're cheating on us?" So I'm a member of Keystroke Medium, which is a group of writers who get together and we help each other out as far as when we're stuck or like we have technical questions. Like even this morning, I had last night, somebody called me up and said, "If you got 5 minutes, I have a desperate question that needs to get answered before I can proceed my story." I'm like half naked, getting out of the shower, getting ready for work. I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" Right, and she's like, "What sound does a hypersonic bullet make as it passes versus a subsonic bullet? It has to do with my story, and here's why." And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Yep, okay, so here's the deal." And then I went into detail about what sounds those things make as they pass in relation to where you are in the shooter, because that's important. And so like that's the kind of thing that happens in Keystroke Medium. People with varying experiences. Like last week, I needed somebody who knew something about carpentry. Just because it had something to do with the story and blah blah blah. And sure enough, there was somebody in the group that was like, "I got you, fam." And it's like, oh, cool, right? But I mean, that's what. So I was on the show with Jeff Haskell, who is a very, very popular superhero fiction writer. He's got 2 series, one called Arsenal, another one called Wraith.
Oh wait, he's the guy we talked to last week.
Yep. Yeah. He's good people. So he's going to be
Wraith
doing.
Is the Spider-Man-ish guy, right?
No. It's a woman. What would happen if John Wick and Wolverine had a baby?
Okay, I haven't seen it.
And her uncle was Nightcrawler.
I guess there's quite a few Wraith comics over the past 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's doing a live stream where he's going to write an entire novel in 24 hours.
That's happening in February, right?
Yep, February 2nd. Right?
Wow.
So he's inspired a lot of people. Like, for example, James Aaron, who does a lot of science fiction, a lot of military science fiction. He's a former Army guy. He said, this is very inspiring to me. And what he's been doing is every day he's been going on YouTube and just writing for an hour. People can hang out, type questions to him as he writes and stuff like that. So
Michael Laron does that every morning.
Yeah.
He has the Power of Writing Hour on YouTube.
So,
it seems boring though, right? I never watched it, but wouldn't it just be watching somebody at a computer?
Yeah, type, right? It really depends on the writer.
Yeah, I mean, if he's writing, what is he saying to the viewers, or is he just,
He's waiting for questions, and when a question comes across, he sits there and he does whatever, and he posts. He puts music in, pod safe music, so that people have something to listen to at the same time. So if you want to, if you want to put it up on your TV while you're getting ready for work, you at least have something to listen to, and then every once in a while you peek in because he's got funny hats on and stuff like that. So
funny.
But that's something we could do on here as well. Pick a topic, have one person pick a topic, have one person name a character, and then every 10 minutes we switch off who's writing, who's doing what.
That is an idea. We'll talk about it as a possible subject for next time. See if it has legs, and if it doesn't, we can go back to talking about literary devices and building audiences and stuff like that.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, before we wrap up, I want to make sure I don't forget this. We were talking about Tolkien earlier, and there's a Kickstarter to save his
estate.
House.
Yeah.
It's as a public writing haven, and they've got 30 days to go, and they're making progress. Ian McKellen apparently is betting. I'm not sure why he doesn't just write the check himself, but let me just throw that up here in a banner. Is this going to be too big for a banner? It might. So anyway, it's easy to find on Kickstarter if you're into that, and just check it out. You were saying, Ryan?
What was I saying? Oh, I was going to say that I think since this is like the writing episode has become that, and it's kind of instructional writing or example writing. Maybe using the newsletter as an example thing, where when we throw up a piece, we throw up the initial piece, and then we also should throw up like the adjustments and changes and things like that, so people can see how we modified it, maybe even go over our thought processes for that. Because the people who would be interested in this episode are probably also interested in that kind of commentary about changes and alterations and different stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, especially for a shorter story. This is the original draft. You can see the corrections we made here and our general thoughts. I like that.
Like a flash fiction, like a one-page little flash fiction.
And that could be something, especially if we're writing something in the half hour or 45 minutes we have here, that would work perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's the thing too. You just have either you have one person write it during the show, right? And everybody can kind of comment as they're going, or you can switch off every few minutes. What do you call it? And while that person is whatever person is writing, the other two can have their witty banter and be like, I can't believe he used that word. Oh, we got a flag on the play. He used there instead of there. And then there's another one, so you can do stuff like that too.
Mine will be funny use of commas, since I apparently don't know how those work, according to Grammarly.
Yeah.
Just make them into semicolons. You look smart. That's what I do.
That's what he co-wrote, or he wrote part of Jade Punk. And he's all over Fate, and I can't remember his name right now. Mike Olson.
Oh, Mike Olson. Yeah, he's the Atomic Robo guy.
Yeah, when he actually designed the asset system for Jade Punk.
Yeah.
And when we got his drafts, I was like, there's a lot of semicolons in here, and I actually had to learn more about semicolons. He uses them a ton, but he doesn't use them improperly. He doesn't do the job. But I was like, wow, I like it. I like how he does it. So now my Medium articles have tons of them.
Yeah, he was on the podcast 7 or 8 years ago talking about the Atomic Robo RPG,
which is a great Fate interaction, by the way.
I have heard it described as the best written, as far as if you want to get someone into Fate. Atomic Robo has been described to me as the best way to do it because it's the most clear for newbies. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that from a few different folks. But
I think you can do whatever you want in it, but I think the way that it plays with skills would probably be a barrier to entry. You really have to know Fate in order to use it.
Really? Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, here's your summary report from the thing that you submitted.
Okay, let me see if I can blow that up so I can read that. Grammar 54, not great. Style 60, spelling 85. All right, that's a high C. So, all right, I will give this a look when if you want to shoot it over to me, I will work through it and try to make things prettier. So, although some of that might have been the stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, cool. Well, hey, guys, we'll meet up again in 7 days. Any closing thoughts before we call it a podcast?
Nope.
Just remember, bring the ring to Mordor, but don't do it like they did it. Take an eagle, just fly. Just fly. There's no reason for
Since that was an option the whole time. Right?
Yeah, $19. Just fly.
Yeah, I recently watched the whole trilogy with my kid, and when the eagle goes and picks him up, he's like 7, and he's like, "Why didn't they take the eagle there in the first place? They could have avoided."
He was busy. They already had a fare. Uber Eagle was, it was tied up. It was late at night.
Cost money per mile.
There was a YouTube video about that where they were like, "Well, why don't we just take the eagles here?" And then there's a bunch of dwarves flying, with Frodo on the eagles, and one of the eagles looks back, tosses his head up, bumps his tail feather, the dwarf falls into his mouth, and Gandalf says, "Well, the eagles get hungry sometimes," which is probably his best explanation as we'll ever get for that. So, guys, thanks for coming out. It's always a pleasure. To all of our listeners and viewers out there, appreciate your time, and we will